It's difficult to free a man of his chains if his captors have trained him to look upon them as jewelry. In this news cycle, we're tired of hearing news reports of Joe Rogan and his weak capitulation and apology tour to the left. After Rogan used his platform to question lucrative pharmaceutical policies, Big Pharma deployed an army of propagandists to hunt up dirt on him to change the conversation. They had earlier done this years ago when actor Tom Cruise questioned the easy and lazy use of drugs on vulnerable people. The tactic back then was to frame Cruise as crazy, a character assassination strategy which Rogan himself bought into.
2014 was just a few years removed from him being wacky. When he did that Matt Lauer interview on the Today Show, where it was like, "You're being glib, Matt. You're being glib." When he's talking about Brooke Shields taking psychiatric medication. And
you understand this? I understand this.
Yeah. Scientology is highly critical of psychiatric medication.
Yeah.
They prefer you stay crazy.
You don't know what you're talking about, Matt. Have you done the research? I've done the research.
Yeah. You're glib, Matt. You're glib. But Lauer didn't handle it that good either.
No.
You're supposed to go, well, explain to me the mechanism of what's happening with these psychiatric drugs, and what do you pose?
Yeah.
And why do you think that you understand the biological makeup of all these different human beings, and that none of them should be taking psychiatric medication?
No.
That's a crazy thing to say, that you're smarter than all these biologists and medical scientists and all these people that have concocted these SSRIs and different...
Have you done the research? Have you done the research?
Are you glib?
So now the same Joe Rogan who echoed the talking points of pharmaceutical companies is now the victim of them himself. It's always important to remember that the pharmaceutical industry pioneered many modern propaganda techniques, like the AstroTurf poster online who pretends to be a regular individual, but who was actually paid by PR firms to post positive things about pharmaceuticals online and to attack people questioning these lucrative products. Every year, the pharmaceutical industry spends on average $38 billion on marketing and only $7 billion on research and development. So they have armies of people paid to dig up dirt on critics, like Joe Rogan. What the opposition research people found was Rogan using the so-called N-word in various broadcasts. He never used the word as a slur, nor did he direct it at any individual. He was merely quoting it when others used the word, like comedian Red Fox, who used it as the title of a comedy special, or when Dick Gregory used it as the title of his autobiography. Rogan committed the heresy of reading these titles, unaware that apparently free speech laws are now regulated and metered according to which ethnicity you are. Evidently, depending on what race you are, you can't use certain words that other races can use. I don't know where this was codified or legislated, but it's supposed to be a part of the shadow laws that our new shadow rulers have imposed from above, written in invisible ink. And it's these invisible ink laws that are now enforced, rather than our actual written laws. You can commit treason all you want and nothing will happen to you, but woe to the person who misgenders a biological male in a dress. And that's what I wanted to talk about here. The concept that people are reacting to words like the N-word, like how medieval Christians would react to somebody taking the Lord's name in vain a few centuries ago. What a society stigmatizes tells you a lot about that society, who the gods are of that society. So it can't fail to be noticed that in this society, you can blaspheme God himself, you can put crosses in jars of urine and slander Jesus, but you can't say the N-word. So who are we called upon to worship? This is allowed to happen because people are losing faith in their own civilization. In a recent poll, 80% of the respondents said that the United States is in a state of decay. These people would of course be right, because they're looking on as their own civilization is being quietly switched out for a new one. Their old religion is being annulled, as new and strange cult-like behavior is being normalized. Except, whereas taking the Lord's name in vain was sacrilege, now it's questioning the sanctity of George Floyd. Whereas under Christianity you were told that Armageddon was coming and you could stave it off by buying indulgences, now you're told that your sinfulness and consumption are leading to global warming, but you can stave off the end of the world with a new global tax. Whereas Catholicism made the assertion that it would be a universal church. That's what Catholic means, universal, global. This is morphed into a secular version called globalism, with corporations standing in for the church. And it's these corporations who are now claiming to be the arbiters of our morality. It's these corporations bringing Rogan to his knees for breaking new and made-up taboos that didn't exist 50 years ago. And the point isn't the word itself. It's the assertion that corporations can determine what you can and cannot say, and that it's their place to create our society's new taboos. As for me, I get my morality from God. I don't get it from the Nabisco Corporation. I take my ethical cues from philosophy or religion, not from Pfizer. According to the book Superclass by David Rothkopf, how can you compare the power of companies to the power of countries? In 2007, for example, global GDP was estimated to be $47 trillion. That same year, the top 250 companies in the world had combined sales in excess of $14.87 trillion, equivalent to nearly a third of global GDP, and an amount exceeding the GDP of the United States or the European Union, $13.20 trillion and $13.74 trillion, respectively. Just the top 100 companies have sales worth $9.72 trillion, and the combined sales of the top 5, Walmart, ExxonMobil, Royal Dutch Shell, BP, and General Motors, was nearly $1.5 trillion, larger than the GDP of all but 7 countries. The moral of the story is that he who lives by slander dies by slander. The same Joe Rogan who parroted pharmaceutical company talking points against Tom Cruise is now being subjected to the same treatment himself. And herein we see a metaphor between the cross and Cruise, because Joe Rogan is certainly being cruise-ified in the public square. Parents, looking to homeschool? Check out Freedom Project Academy. It's at fpeusa.org. Give your kids an education that doesn't diminish and undermine their faith in their society, but rather bolster them with a true history and a real education. Cicero said that the education of a free man consists of teaching him how to think, whereas the education of a slave consists of teaching him what to think. If you love your children and want the best for them, check out Freedom Project Academy today.